Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. I am coming in at you feeling like a new woman. I have been sick with strep throat for a few days and they were horrible, and now I'm feeling a lot better. So I am just so grateful, thankful that I'm feeling not ill and that I can like spend time with you guys again. I'm just like, this is what I love to do. If you are new here, wait, no, we're not going down that route yet. Today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be looking at a list that the New York Times put out, and it is called the 22 Works of Fiction to Read This Spring. And it is what the New York Times thinks is the best new releases in fiction that are worthy to at least think about or try and pick up or something along those lines. I'm a huge fan of the New York Times. It can get kind of judgy about the lists they put together, but I do like to keep abreast of what's going on in the book market, new releases. In some ways, I feel like it helps me keep an eye out for reviews of books that I might be interested in when they start popping up around the booktube sphere, and it helps me just stay in the know of what's coming out, which is what I love. Books and reading are basically like the only sport that I pay attention to. I'm sort of like while others I'm so excited that I can't speak. While others cheer on baseball, basketball, football, literally I know nothing about that stuff. This is my sport, keeping up with all of what's new in the market and all the book prizes and such. So anyways, if you, now we're at the part, if you also love keeping track of new releases, being judgy about new releases, I would encourage you to subscribe, stick around, and otherwise let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. I have scooted to the side so that we have plenty of room for pictures. And at the very top of this list is Burnham Wood by Eleanor Catton. This was published by Farrar, Straus and Giroux, and it is supposed to come out, or is supposed to have come out on March 7th. Now I have read The Luminaries, which I actually have right here by Eleanor Catton, and I loved it. It is a slow burn, beautifully plotted, wonderfully intricate murder mystery that takes place during the gold rush in New Zealand. And her new book is also set in New Zealand because she is a New Zealand author. She's from Auckland, New Zealand. And this new book also takes place in New Zealand. And this is what it's supposed to be about. It is about, Burnham Wood is a guerrilla gardening collective in New Zealand, struggling to stay solvent. After its founder sets her sights on an abandoned farm, she tussles with an American billionaire over its fate. And it's supposed to be that push and pull. The American billionaire, he supposedly wants the land to build a doomsday bunker in there. So strange. I've heard it is a slow burn, and from what I found out about my pacing preferences recently, this seems like it would be the book for me. Ecofeminism was definitely a new term for me, and I'm glad I learned a bit more about it. Burnham Wood as a whole, I think I'm interested as to what BookTube will say about it, and see where it shows up in prize circuits, if it shows up on, the Booker's long list. I'm just curious about its future career in the book world, including our corner of BookTube. There have been a couple of people who've already reviewed it, Lindy from Lindy's Magpie Reads and Eric Carl Anderson, I believe. I will leave the relevant reviews of this book linked down below. Next up is Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. This was published by Pamela Dorman Books on March 7th. Now, Jenny Jackson is the editor of Cormac McCarthy and Gabrielle Zevin, and also someone named Kevin Kwan, who I am not familiar with. And actually, I have not read anything by any of the authors that she edits. much to, you know, their great success. I've never picked up any of their books. So she has a book of her own. I wonder if she's a good writer, you know, considering that she's edited some very successful writers. I love the concept of this book. It is supposed to be a comedy of manners and possibly errors, which I love a funny book. I really do, especially if it hits my funny bone the right way. And it is going to be a family crammed in the same house in Brownstone Heights, and they are quite wealthy, or maybe to them comfortable. Not, you know, just comfortable, not wealthy. I wonder what that means. Their last names are the Stocktons. Stockton is the name of my hometown, which is why I think this book is sort of working its charm on me in its own little way. And it's supposed to be about two sisters, a brother and a sister-in-law, and how they're getting along in this house together. The next book also was published on March 7th, and it is River Spirit by Leila Aboulela, and this was published by Grove Press. This is going to be following or starting out when the war breaks out in 19th century Sudan. And the war starts because of a messianic figure that's coming out and making all these claims. But who we are actually following is an orphan girl and her father's friend who is a merchant, and we're following them throughout their lives. I think that this is going to be for the historical fiction lovers. I'm interested in it because of the time period. I've never read about 19th century Sudan, and I'm interested in it. Take What You Need by Idra Novey. This was published by Viking, and it came out on March 14th. This is going to be using the trope of back to your hometown, because a young woman with unresolved feelings towards her family goes back home after her former stepmother, Jean, passes away, and she was estranged with her mother. Now, here's the deal. It says that it's braiding the story of art, ambition, and passion. Art is a buzzword in my heart. The term art really gets to me. I like books about art, or I think I do, but I actually don't. More often than not, art books really frustrate. Books that have the theme of art are not done well, in my opinion. And I had someone ask, you know, they wondered if I could explain the difference between when art is done right in a book and when art is done poorly in a book. And I love that idea. So keep an eye out for that, because I think I'll eventually do it. But I know that for me, it's very polarizing. So I'm like, I just might stay away from books about art, because more often than not, they end up going terribly, terribly wrong for me. Also published on March 14th, we have Heart Sutra, and this is by Jan Lianke, and it was translated by Carlos Rojas. This was published by Grove Press. Now, the description sounds so juicy, okay? So juicy, because we are set on the campus of a religious university in Beijing. And there is a tug of war going on between religions. Like, this sounds exactly my cup of tea. And it's going to be a tug of war of China's 5 major religions, which is Buddhism, Taoism, Catholicism, Protestantism, and Islam. And then 2 teenagers, a Buddhist and a Taoist, form a connection, and they don't know whether they should abandon religion altogether or if they should, join an organization on campus. Now here's where I'm like, oh, put the brakes on, like, no. And it says that it's part satirical campus novel. Most satire doesn't really work for me. Most satire gets me in like the, it could have been done better. The last satirical novel that worked really well for me, and I think it was a satirical novel, was The Trees by Percival Everett. I loved that book. But otherwise, it's like, no. So anyways, I like the concept, but I'll probably pass on this one. Hello, Beautiful by Anne Napolitano. This is supposed to be an homage to Little Women by Lois May Alcott, which on the surface sounds like a beautiful book, but ultimately it made me just want to read the original book. Flux by Jinwoo Chong. Now this is a debut author published by Melville House, and it came out on March 21st. How do you all feel about experimental books? This sounds like one. It's supposed to follow 3 main characters, and it is a time traveling novel. I'm not really sure how it's time traveling, but time traveling nonetheless. And all of the characters, or the book centers around grief. For me, anything that sounds experimental is like an anti-buzzword. It really just makes me go, no thank you. That's what this book is doing. But my anti-buzzword might be your buzzword. And if it is, can you let me know down in the comments down below if you just love experimental novels and their appeal to you? Because for me, I'm just like, no thank you. Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. This is published by Farrar, Straus and Giroux. I think that's how you say it. And it was published on March 21st. Now, the premise of this book is really getting me in the feels, and the cover and everything. A widow named C.M. attempts to unravel her late wife's past by writing her biography. And then as she's basically figuring out her late wife, she is not quite the person that she thought she was. She's far crueler and more dangerous than the surviving wife, ever realized. And so everything, it's like all signs point towards go. It's that feeling of like, oh, that sounds like it was written for me, in my heart, in my soul. Have you read it? Do you know anything about this book? However, the thing that helps me kind of slow down and get my bearings about me is that that's how I felt about the book Woman Eating by Claire Coda. It was like all signs pointed towards me liking it. And then when I actually got in there, I felt like the execution of this wonderful idea was so poor that it just made me go bleh. Like, it was just not good. No, like the book is getting worse in my memory. And so that's what helps me. It's books like that help me sort of keep my mind about me, wait for reviews, and just like just slow down, girl. Like, don't go shopping right now. But on the surface, this just sounds like an incredible book. Lone Women by Victor LaValle, and it is published by One World. It came out on March 28th. It says here, it's noted that LaValle is the author of The Changeling and other horror novels. I would have no idea because I really don't follow the horror genre in the least. Occasionally I'll have a moment where I'm really interested in reading horror because I feel like it'll really suck me in, and I'll be totally invested, and I'll like, it's so gross I can't look away. Like every once in a while I'll have that feeling, and then I will be like, no, the reality is it will scare you half to death and you'll lose 5 nights of sleep. So I tend to stay away. But this particular horror is about, it's set in 1915, and a young Black woman lights her childhood home on fire and flees to California with only a trunk containing everything that still matters. And apparently some of the horror comes out in the social commentary of the book, which again, that type of thing really scares me and gets in and amongst me. So I think I'm just gonna back away slowly from this one. Sometimes the setting of a book is what really gets me, and it starts to really kind of get me excited, and I start to like fall in love with the idea of reading the book, and I just start to get swept away with the idea of reading the book just because the setting sort of tickles my heartstrings in a way. It piques my interest. It's the thing that like I want to, like where I want to be right now kind of thing. And that is exactly what's happening with this next book. And then what I have to do is I have to kind of remind myself that it's just the setting. The setting isn't everything, and I have to like back away slowly a little bit and get more of a context of what the book is about before I actually just like go in and shop or go in and let that desire of being in that setting take over, and all of a sudden I'm like $25 short, $25 less rich. What is it called? $25 are spent. I don't know the phrase. $25 poorer. That's right. $25 poorer because I let my feelings about a setting get away from me, and all of a sudden I've bought a book with a setting, and then the book isn't very good because I didn't even think, is this the book I would like? So anyways, that's what's happening with this book here. It's called Commitment by Mona Simpson. It is set in California in 1975, and it is following an aspiring architect that needs to pay his way through Berkeley. I have been to Berkeley a bunch. I lived within driving distance to Berkeley, and so I'm just like, oh, like I want it. But anyways, and it's about him needing to pay his way through Berkeley, and his sister, who is illegally attending a well-funded public school in Los Angeles, and is angling to go to an Ivy League school. And then, amid all of this, their mother checks into a psychiatric ward. All of it sounds fine, but what's really getting me is that setting. It sounds just like Berkeley's prime time, and it just sounds like a great time. A great time, all right? A great time. But I have to remember, it's just the place that sounds really good rather than like the whole novel. This next book, I don't know, it sounds just kind of strange, but it's called Sea Change by Gina Chung. It was published by Vintage, and it came out on March 28th. Now, the main character, Row, her boyfriend leaves, her best friend just got engaged, the mall that she's working at, the aquarium at the mall that she's working at sells the octopus that her father discovered. And during this, she needs to grapple with her feelings, probably feelings of change, which is why it's called Sea Change. It sounds really predictable. I'm not going to lie. The book sounds very predictable and not my kind of thing. But what it reminded me was that I really want to pick up my copy of The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery. And when I saw that this had something to do with an octopus, I was like, oh yeah, there's that book that I wanted to read. Thank you for reminding me and rerouting my desire back to my own collection. The New Earth by Jess Row. This was published by Echo, and it came out on March 28th. This sounds like it has everything. So as the main character is about to get married, her family has a lot to reconcile. So her mother revealed that her biological father was black. Winter's sister was killed by an Israeli Defense Force sniper. Her brother became a monk, and their father took a vow of silence in the Zen monastery in Vermont. And so the big question is, can they cast aside their loneliness and all come back together again? And it sounds like an interesting question, but doesn't really pique the highest parts of my interest. We're now in April, and this first book is Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. Now, apparently Sittenfeld has written quite a few novels, 7. This is his 7th novel, and it is published by Random House, and it came out on April 4th. Now, it follows Sally, who pokes fun at her male colleagues when they date celebrity hosts. And in the same week, she strikes a rapport with someone that she's not supposed to. And then, the plot ensues from there. It sounds very cute. I don't know. I'm just I haven't read anything by this author before, and I kind of would rather just go back and see what was best received by him and pick up that book off of thrift books and save my money and see if he's an author for me. That's what I want to do. But overall, this isn't really piquing my interest very much. Next up, we have Greek Lessons by Kang, and it was translated by Deborah Smith and Emily Yi Wong. Now, Kang is the author of the International Booker Prize. She won the International Booker, her and her translator, for the book, The Vegetarian. And actually, I would be more interested in reading that, considering it won the International Booker and is probably a little more accessible than Greek Lessons. But Greek Lessons is about a teacher losing his vision and a student losing her voice, and they build a friendship during night school Greek lessons. It sounds beautiful, but again, the book that this is making me want to read is her previous book, The Vegetarian. Another big name, at least to me, and it is Dennis Lehane, and he came out with a book called Small Mercies. This was published by Harper, and it comes out on April 25th. Dennis Lehane wrote Mystic River and I'm starting to like lose all my words, and Shutter Island. He has been a writer for The Wire and Boardwalk Empire, and this is his new thriller, and it's set in the summer of 1974. Now, I don't know, I'm not a big thriller reader, so I'm not super interested in this. I don't even know. I know that Mystic River and Shutter Island were really popular books, but I don't even know how our booktube community even liked it. Will you tell me if you read them? How did you like them? I have no idea about Lehane as an author, or if he is someone that I would even like. So, of course, his new book, I'm just sort of like, okay. This next book is interesting. Tell me what you think of it. It's called Changing All-Stars, and it's by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. And here's what it's about. In this novel, it follows a televised gladiator circuit where convicted murderers fight to the death for their chance to win their freedom. Yes, you heard me correctly. I have no idea what to think. Next up, we have The Covenant of Water, and this is by Abraham Verghese, and it was published by Grove Press and comes out on May 2nd. Now, this is supposed to follow, it's set in modern India and following a single family, and this family seems to be cursed because a member of each generation has drowned. Now, I love the idea of family curses and looking into that and seeing what they all mean, and so I like the idea of it, but I've never even heard of this author, so I'm just gonna keep my eye out on reviews of this book. Next up, we have The Ferryman by Justin Cronin, and this is published by Ballantine Books, and it's coming out on May 2nd. Now, this is going to be following a utopian society, and the whole thing is that it sends the elders to be reborn on a nearby island. And the ferryman who takes the bodies back and forth gets a strange message from his father, which is, the world is not the world, you're not you. And of course, that sets him off as to wonder about his existence. It sounds interesting. I know Cronin is, I think he's written quite a few books before this. I've never read anything by him. I don't know. What do you all think? A familiar name, though not for writing necessarily. And Tom Hanks came out with a fiction novel. It's his first novel. Apparently he has a short story collection out there. Yes, Tom Hanks, the voice of Woody, yes, has a book, and it's called The Making of Another Major Motion Picture Masterpiece. And it was published by Knopf, and it's going to come out on May 9th. Now, this is going to be about Hollywood, and I really just can't get my mind off the fact that Tom Hanks wrote a book. I love me some Tom Hanks, but I don't know if I'm not really interested in reading his works of fiction. Retrospective by Juan Gabriel Vasquez, translated by Anne McLean. This book is giving me Taylor Jenkins Reid's vibes, like Daisy Jones and the Six and The 7 Lives of Evelyn Hugo, because this is what it's about. So it says, while in Barcelona for a retrospective of his work, this director named Sergio looks back on the events that shaped him, and using over 30 hours of conversations recorded between 2013 and 2020, plus countless emails and text messages, they reconstruct this director's life episode by episode. Doesn't that just sound like what we got with the final revival of Opal and Nev and Daisy Jones and the Six and all of those books? It just seems like another version of that. This is being published by Riverhead, and it comes out on May 9th. The Guest by Emma Cline, which is being published by Random House, and that comes out on May 16th. Is going to be a thriller that takes a close look at the young, broke, and beautiful and how they operate in spaces of extreme wealth. The idea sounds beautiful. I know that she wrote a book called The Girls, which focused on a Mason-like cult, and I didn't read it. And so I'm curious about this author, but obviously not enough to pick up or even buy one of her books. And finally, we have Yellow Face by R.F. Kwong. And this is published by William Morrow, and it comes out on May 16th. And this is going to be talking about, this is her 5th novel, and it's going to be probing questions of identity, power, and narrative ownership in book publishing. I think it's interesting, but I own The Poppy War, the first book in the Poppy War trilogy by the same author, and I haven't gotten to it yet. And actually, someone recently gifted me Babel, or Babel, I'm not sure, on ebook, and so I have that on my Kindle. And so I have now 2 books by this author, and I would rather, it's kind of like one of those things where I'm like rerouting my small interest in Yellow Face back to the books that I do own by the same author, and it's going to in the long run save me money, and it'll help me, you know, read my own collection and decide if I even like this author, and then go on from there. So that was all of my thoughts. Woo, that was a long list. That was a long list, y'all. I also want to go over the nonfiction books that the New York Times, recommended for spring. I have some thoughts about those as well. But let me know, are you interested in any of these books? Now that you've gotten to the end of the video, woo, I wonder if y'all made it. Let me know if you made it. I don't know. But yeah, that's it from me. I really enjoyed going through this list with you, and now I have some ideas of books to keep my eyes out for, books to keep my eyes out for reviews of, and books that I'm definitely not interested in or have decided maybe not for me. But it's, you know, all in good fun, all in lightheartedness. Anyhow, let me know what you thought. I would love to know. But otherwise, thank you for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye!